Hello, Derby fans. We're back in the booth today with Travis Stone. You all seem to love it, so we thought we'd come back and visit him on Derby Day and talk a little bit more about how he preps for the Derby. So he's getting ready for race 6 right now. But Travis, if you want to kind of tell people, I know with the larger fields, you have a bit of a more tedious process. So I'm going to give details on that.
Yeah, sure. So in a typical race, the prep time is looking at the race, a few days in advance, nothing crazy. But then when they come on the track, coloring the silks, which I'll show you here in a minute, and then memorizing them when they're on the track. But when the Kentucky Derby comes around, you can't leave it to that. You have to be way more prepared and way more ready for scenarios, situations. You have to memorize the silks way in advance because that's the last thing you need to be worried about or thinking about. So for this year's Kentucky Derby, I started working on it in the middle of July. And I'll show you, I have some notes. So I printed up the past performances for every single horse in the race. I can't let you read them because it's giving away secrets, but here's just a bunch of notes I took on each horse that's in the race. Some horses get more notes than others. Things to think about, things to consider, scenarios or situations that may or may not happen, and then actually start to compile it into sort of a bit of a book, if you will. So here's what I think the race will look like in the opening quarter mile. New York traffic and authentic, probably somewhat close. Storm the Court's going to be up close too. A little note to myself that authentic New York traffic have very similar silks, so just be mindful of that when calling the race. And then again, the same thing. Each horse has a page with notes and things to say, and it's just all about cramming as much into your mind as possible, and you hope that at the right moment, in the right part of the race, the right situation happens, and you're able to pull upon one of those things.
So a couple questions. One, people keep asking about when the Derby goes off. So coverage starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC, and post time is 7 p.m. for the Kentucky Derby race. But also, Speedster 215 from Periscope wants to know what the stash of markers is for.
So I'll show you here in a minute when they get ready to come out, but as the race caller, I memorize the horses by the silks that they wear. Not the horses that wear, the jockey wears them. So here's the Derby this year, and these are the silks that they all have. And as an example, so they're going down the back stretch, and they're stacked across the track, and I know that attachment rate is blue with some red, but what happens if I can see someone on the outside and I can't really tell who it is, but I see some purple and yellow, I can remember that it's honor AP, or if need be, I can every day I do these silks like this and use it to help memorize and help call the race.
Here's a good one from Colleen on Facebook. She wants to know what steps you take to remain calm and confident at Derby time.
Did you say competent?
Calm and confident and competent.
I think a big part of that is there's always nerves and there's always anxiety. It's the biggest race in the world, so that is always a part of it. But being prepared and just knowing and thinking about what could or could not happen in the race for weeks just helps you think about what may or may not happen. And you're just, the more prepared you are, you almost want to be prepared to a fault in a way. Just think about everything. I mean, I even have very specific times of when I'm drinking water today. I'm drinking water on every odd race, as an example. Make sure I grab a new bottle and make sure that I drink the entire bottle for 2 races. Other little routines and when to go to the bathroom. Just so it's all planned out and it's all set, and there's nothing left to chance as much as possible.
Thomas wants to know if you're looking forward to anything about basically the uniqueness of this Derby. Is there anything different since it's a different kind of?
Yeah, it's certainly different. However, it's this favorite in the race, Tiz de Law, is a phenomenal racehorse, and I'm excited to see what he can do. There's a chance that he wins for fun, and he wins by a lot. and sort of cements himself as not only the best 3-year-old, but even maybe the best horse in the country. And I think he's probably, you could argue he's already there. So yeah, I mean, it's different. And there's not a lot of unknowns this year. But let me make this announcement. On the track, race number 6, scratch numbers 8 and 9. Double exacta, trifecta, superfecta, pick 3 wagering, 8 minutes to boast. So yeah, I mean, and then the other thing with this year's Derby is, in a May Derby, these horses are pretty lightly raced, and they haven't established themselves yet. Or in September, and there's been plenty of time for them to do so. So there's less question marks about their ability. They're a little bit more of a known commodity. So it just makes for a different flavor.
Jacqueline says that you should just have some Woodford Reserve bourbon, and it'll calm your nerves.
We won't tell her what's in the drawer.
How many, Becca wants to know, how many races do you call in a typical week?
We have usually 4 days of racing here at Churchill, so it's probably anywhere from 35 to 45, depending on what week it is. And so, yeah, I mean, my entire life, I've probably called somewhere between 15 and 20,000.
Wow. Rebecca loves your purple tie.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
So we went over this a little bit yesterday, but in case anyone's new, Andrew wants to know how long have you been calling races? So maybe just a little bit about that. How
Sure.
you got into it.
I became a racing fan when I was a kid because we used to go to Saratoga all the time, and was one of those kids that would come home and just play horse racing, and I'd call the race. And I did that a lot. And when I was about 12 years old, I sort of realized I think I might want to do this for my life. And I wrote a letter to Tom Durkin and asked him, hey, how do you become a track announcer? What do you do? He was the race caller in New York at the time. He wrote me back, gave me some advice, and I just worked at it from there. Went to auction school, kept practicing, and got my first job in the industry in 2006 at Churchill Downs. And then spent some time there, New York, New Jersey for a bit, and then Kentucky.
So several people are asking what your Derby picks are, specifically a super pick. I know you don't wager.
I don't wager on the races that I call. That is the worst part about calling the Derby. It's a minor inconvenience, though. I think Tisdalaw is probably going to win. I think Honor AP will try and run him down and most likely finish second. And then I think there's 3 horses underneath that I'd be interested in betting on. Enforceable, Max Player, and now I'm drawing a blank on my third idea. Enforceable, Max Player, a little bit of Storm the Court, although I don't know what sort of price he's going to offer. An attachment rate. Attachment rate, the other one I'm telling people to key under.
This is a new question I don't think we've had before. Kelly wants to know if you've ever called a race in your dreams, like while you're sleeping. Do you call races?
Oh,
do you have dreams about it?
Yeah, nightmares. That's a great question. This is like really inside baseball, but all announcers will have a series of recurring dreams that are all the same. We can never find the booth. The entire dream is about like running around trying to find the booth. You open doors, it's not there. You go up the next level, it's not there. And while that's happening, the horses are going to the gate. And so I think that's probably like some sort of deep psychological like worry that announcers have, is not being able to be in the booth when the race comes around. So, and it's funny, if you talk to any announcer, they'll tell you they have that dream periodically.
So I'm not sure if you're going to want to give out this information, but maybe you can talk about how you come up with them. Mike wants to know what phrase you'll say when you see "'Tis the law" on front when turning for home, but I know you usually have some.
I do. I have a bunch of stuff written down. I definitely don't share those ahead of time. I will say that the name Tisdalaw is really cool. It's a great name for a horse, and there's a lot of fun ways that you can sort of play off of that. And maybe it's something simple as "'Tis the law takes the lead," which I think would capture the moment pretty well. But we'll see. It's got to come to your brain, and it's got to come out of your mouth the right way. You just never know. When you're in the binoculars and everything's happening, you just never know what may or may not come out.
So it seems like Darlene says that food servers have similar nightmares, but they can't find the table.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Interesting. So favorite race you've ever called?
Derby, 2015. American Pharoah.
And what was your line on that one?
American Pharoah rules the Derby.
Have you ever been asked to cover or call a different sport?
No, actually. This is a conversation many of us announcers have had before. A lot of what we do would translate over well. The problem is race meets are long and the schedule is tough, and so it's hard to find sports that jive well with racing. But I've thought about it. Maybe someday, give it a shot. I'd like to try it just to see. Because we all use a lot of like unique words, language, and phrases to describe horse racing that would work in almost any other sport too. Go ahead.
We'll let you.
A couple more. Yeah.
Let you prepare here. People can watch.
Okay. Let's see. Stilts. This race has 2 sets of silks that are going to be in the Derby. That helps. Cool Bobby, Cool Bobby, Cool Bobby. Wayne O, Wayne O, Cool Bobby. Alex June, Wayne O. Wild Poppet, Wild Poppet, Wild Poppet, Wild Poppet, Wild Poppet. See you Coastal Defense, Coastal Defense, Coastal Defense, Wild Poppet. Hirsch, Coastal Defense and Hirsch, Coastal Defense, and Hirsch, Street Class. These are a little bit hard to see sometimes. Churchill has a new, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, Churchill has a new wall that blocks my entire view of the horses. So the start of this race, I have to watch it off the TV, and I have to use the TV to help memorize these horses. We obviously can't see them.
Do you have any special memory tricks to remember the horses? That's from Rusty.
Yes, so like whatever works, right? So like there's a horse in this race called Wild Poppet, and for whatever reason, I don't even know what a poppet is, but I'm picturing a poppet is pink and purple, and so when I see pink and purple, Wild Poppet. The horse named Cool Bobby, who's actually an honorary Peace Silks. I'm thinking of a friend Bobby wearing a purple and yellow shirt. Whatever device works. It's hard because you don't want to get too clouded in your brain with stuff throughout the day, but that's the job.
Jeff said you'd be a good hockey announcer, fast tempo, in case you want to change careers. Let's see here.
I don't even know anything about hockey, but I'd try that.
Mm-hmm.
Less than a minute. All right, we got Hirsch, we've got Sir Alfred James, Coastal Defense, Cool Bobby, Straight Class, Wayno. We got Hirsch, we got Cool Bobby, Sir Alfred James, Coastal Defense, Street Class. These they're hard races. The horses have reached the starting gate. It's post time. Because the TV, they don't look the same color-wise on TV as they do through the binoculars. We'll do what we can. Couple of Quincy, Alex June, Stilts, Wayne O, Wild Poppet. Waiting for Wild Poppet, Cowboy Diplomacy, and Alex June.
What did you call your first race?
2003, maybe? Boston. They're in the gate. And they're off. Cowboy Diplomacy from the far outside is away well. Cool Bobby's hustled out too. Wayno is flashing speed as well. The field races up the chute, comes for the main track, and Cool Bobby in between. Stilts is right there. Cowboy Diplomacy on the outside, and Wayno toward the rail. Those four scrimmage on early. 2 lengths back to Sir Alfred James, who comes on to be 5th in the early stages. Then it's Street Class Racing in 6th. Alex June over to the inside to be 7th. Coastal Defense is 8th. Wild Poppet is 9th, and Hirsch is at the back in 10th. Down the backstretch run, 22-2. Was an opening quarter mile. There's 4 furlongs to go. Cool Bobby going head-to-head with Cowboy Diplomacy. Cool Bobby on the inside, narrow lead. Cowboy Diplomacy cranks up the pressure. 3 furlongs to go. These two head-to-head. Sir Alfred James with a 3-wide bid. 3 wide on the outside and coming on now. Right in behind is Wayno Racing in 4th. Farther back in the field, Stilts is 5th and under pressure. Farther back, Coastal Defense trying to muster up a late bid. They're off the turn into the stretch. Sir Alfred James pounces on the leaders, grabs it with 1 furlong to go. Cowboy Diplomacy back into 2nd. Cool Bobby fighting on as well. Coastal Defense 5th, and now 4th, and now 3rd, and now 2nd, closing in fast. Sir Alfred James cleared by 2. Coastal Defense finishing fast. It's going to be tight. Here's the wire. Sir Alfred James holds on. Coastal Defense ran at a racetrack. Cool Bobby 3rd. Wild Poppet was 4th. Oh, it's a good race. Very exciting.
We have a couple people. We have some good questions. Let's see.
Fire away.
David wants to know, does your job ever become stressful?
Yeah. It's the worst part is when you're watching the race, you're calling the race, and things are going down, and you just can't think of who a horse is. It is so unnerving. And you can come up with some filler, you can come up with some nonsense, but eventually you got to say that name. That's stressful. And then big races are stressful. The Derby's stressful. You know, it's just such pressure, intensity. Biggest race. It's the most unique race. There's never 16 to 20 horses in any other race in America throughout the year. So, it can definitely be stressful. It's fun, though. It's like, you know, sort of why you get into it is to feel that rush.
So Melissa wants to know, what is the best thing about being the voice of Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Derby? I personally think it's your view, but you might not. Maybe Richie could show them the view.
The view is awesome. Do this right quick, I'll answer. Number 2, Sir Alfred James first. Number 3, Coastal Defense was 2nd. 6, Cool Bobby was 3rd. And 5, Wild Poppet finished 4th. Not official. This is, you know what I would say? This is a horse racing town. And so there's virtually nobody in the city that doesn't like the sport. Everybody's been to Churchill. Everybody can relate. And that's pretty cool. So you can be having breakfast in a random spot and someone wants to talk racing. Which, as a racing fan, that's awesome. Very few towns in America are like that.
A lot of people want to know, and this was yesterday too, if you've ever been on a horse or own a horse.
No, never owned a horse. I rode a pony at an amusement park when I was a kid. That was about it. No, I've never owned. Do this right quick. Sir Alfred James is a 4-year-old son of Munnings from Super Phoebe by Malabar Gold, owned by Mountjoy Stable, Pope McLean, Mark McLean, and Pope McLean Jr., trained by Al Stahl Jr. with Colby Hernandez, the winning rider. The winner was bred in Kentucky by his owners. The time for the race was 1:21.41 seconds.
Rusty wants to know if there's ever been a race in history that you've memorized and can call by memory. Like, I guess he means you could call it now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you queued up, like, the 2001 Breeders' Cup Classic that Tiz now won, I could go right along with it. That was a Breeders' Cup I was at with my dad. It was right after September 11th. There's probably 10 of them that I can definitely repeat hundreds of lines used in race calls. But probably that 01 Classic would be one.
We have one here from Tanner Stone.
Oh, no.
Who wants to know, do you have any relatives or siblings? Are they involved in horse racing?
Tanner's my brother. And he used to hot walk horses for a trainer here in Kentucky called Norm Cassie, who's a good friend of mine. He did that for a summer, lived with me and made a mess of my apartment. But no family members really involved in the sport. No. I have a sister, Kendra, too, who might be watching. I better give her a plug. She'll be upset.
She just not commenting.
No, Tanner's the golden child, though. So,
so several people are curious about possible blunders that you've done before. So if you've ever miscalled a name or ever couldn't think of the name, any of that kind of stuff. So.
I mean, there was the first race today. There was 4 or 5 horses. I don't remember. But they were stacked way across the track. And I don't know if you can appreciate it with the video here, but the way the track is angled and where my booth is being way up high, horses that are on the far outside look like they are way farther ahead or farther along than any horse to the inside. And there was a horse that grabbed the narrow lead for a couple of jumps, if that. But from my perspective, it looked like he had taken a much clearer lead. And he ended up getting run down inside. And it was not a bad call. It was sort of a suboptimal call, is how I describe it. And it's just sort of one of those moments where you could dwell on it and worry about it, but you got to turn the page and get back to work. So yeah, I mean, things like that happen every day. I'm sure if I were to truly dissect the race we just did, that I'd find a couple of things here or there I didn't like. It's ultimately a human doing the job, and ideally we avoid them as much as possible.
This just in, a comment from Kendra Stone. You're awesome and we love you. My question is, how awesome is your sister?
Yeah. That's funny.
Good support. What do you do between races? So you've shown a little bit. But...
Yeah, I mean, for like Derby, between every race today, I've been going through my notes just to kind of keep that stuff fresh in mind. I'll look at the next race a little bit. Visit with visitors. People come up to the booth a lot to watch races, watch other races happening around the country and other stakes races, things like that. But on a day like Derby Day, the objective between races is to just try and stay completely calm and relaxed as possible and not get the butterflies going too early, or else it's going to be a long day.
Julian thinks we should leave you alone, but you don't mind us being in here, right?
You can hang out with me all day long.
Okay. Just want to put everyone's minds at ease.
We're good. We got a lot of time to go before the Derby.
There's a couple questions about if you've called the race, if you've ever called a race sick, or what happens. Is there another race caller on standby if you were to, knock on wood?
I'm knocking on wood. I have never called in sick from race calling. I've taken days off for my sister's wedding, for example, but I've never, it's a big knock on wood, never been sick and couldn't call. If I couldn't call, I don't know what they would do. It's actually a great question. There's a couple of race callers in the area that they could probably call in. But if it happened last minute, I don't know what they would do. I think Kevin Kirstein Publicity would have to bust out the mic.
Sherry wants to know: Did you ever call any of Zenyattas races?
Zenyatta was West Coast. No, I was all East Coast. She was at the very beginning of my career too. I did call, however, when she lost the Breeders' Cup here to a horse named Blame. I had called Blame as a 3-year-old in Louisiana. He actually lost the race that I called, believe it or not. So I called Blame the horse that beat her once, but never called Zenyattas.
Mike wants to know if you have any superstitions before the big race, or I guess any races.
Yeah, I mean, I am a superstitious guy, but I'll tell you a couple of things that I do that I don't know if you necessarily label them as superstition, but when the horses are going into the gate, or getting ready to head toward the gate, I try and remember to go bing bong, bing bong. There's a technique I learned in auction school that when you're on a microphone and you're talking to somebody or talking to a crowd or public address, if you start talking up here with a very high voice, there's really nowhere for you to go. You can't really talk any higher. So now your muscles in your throat and stuff are getting tight, and that's just going to cause all sorts of trouble. Whereas if you go bing bong, bing bong, and you start talking down here, you have all of your vocal register to utilize. So I'm trying to make sure I do that. And then once we get a little bit closer to Derby, I watch Seinfeld between races. just to keep the mood light and keep the mind off what's about to happen. But yeah, nothing super crazy.
Is there any race that you would love to call in the future, or any race from the past that you would have liked to call?
I would love to someday call the Travers in Saratoga, which is where I grew up, which is the race Tis the Law won before he's going to run here today. That would be way cool. But fortunately, being another race, I'd say the Belmont Stakes, being a mile and a half in a typical year, that would be a fun challenge, calling a 12 furlong classic. But the good thing about being at Churchill is you get to call the best one, Derby. And then we've had the Breeders' Cup here too, so there's been a lot of good racing from top to bottom here. So we've been pretty fortunate in that regard.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes with Travis, so if you have questions, get them in now. And for those of you asking, NBC goes on air with coverage here at about 30 minutes, 2:30 Eastern time, and the race post time is 7 p.m. for the Kentucky Derby. Anna wants to know, have you ever tried on one of the big hats?
I got a big head. They don't fit. No. No. I need to be an extra big hat. No.
Let's see. What's the feeling you have at the end of the race?
A race like that, I'll give you a specific example. Obviously, last year there was quite a bit of drama. Maximum Security crossed the wire first, got disqualified. Last year was awful weather. It was rainy and foggy and just miserable. And they came onto the track, and all the silks were memorized. Everything was good, but there were 3 horses in pink silks: War of Will, Game Winner, and Maximum Security. And they came on the track, and they just looked the same. They just looked completely the same. Then there was Vekoma and Long Range Toddy. They looked completely the same, even though they were supposed to be different colors. Just the way the clouds were and the lack of sun and everything. So that was a race where it was stressful when they're going to the gate, because I did feel a little bit out of control. It just felt like I'm uncomfortable. So get through the race call goes fine, and it was just such a moment of relief that it's over. And everybody's like, what was it like being involved in the announcing of the DQ? And I was like, I actually don't remember any of that. I just remember being happy the race was over. And it's like, that's the same way every year. You're just so happy that it's over. Last year, it was more joy that it was over. Every other year, it's more of like, that was awesome. It's such a wild experience that, you get through the call, you turn off the mic. It's like, wow, I can't believe I just did that. It's relief and it's an excitement.
With that, so if you go on our social media, you can see Travis call yesterday's Oaks race from inside the booth. And then we should have the Derby race, and we have past years too. So if you search around on there, you can actually see him call it from inside the booth.
Yep.
See, we'll take a couple more questions and then let you get back to it. Let's see here. Is there any coined phrases that you feel you have injected into your calling style of race? Specific, Kelly. Good question.
That's actually a great question. So there's a lot of famous sort of catchphrases that announcers have. Dave Johnson would always say, "And down the stretch they come," which was his thing. Like, it was awesome whenever he did it. I don't have any signature sort of coined phrases like that purposefully, because I don't think you can really beat "and down the stretch they come." That's pretty much as good as it gets. But I do have some sayings I'll go to at times that I do like. But I've been told by friends that sound good. I like to use the phrase "just like that" when a horse makes a really quick and sudden move and takes the lead just like that. Another finishing phrase I like to do is going, gone, when a horse just keeps running away from the rest of them. But I have a binder full of words and phrases and sayings and things to bark out when the right situation occurs, and just hopefully some of those come out throughout. But nothing signature or coined.
Okay, so you answered this earlier, but for people who tuned in, who do you like in the Derby today? And that'll be our last one.
Sure. I think Tisdala is going to be very tough to beat. I think the one horse that can beat him is Honor AP. Much of my prep for the call has been about them turning for home and Tisdala having the lead and whether or not Honor AP can run him down. But 3 long shots you might want to use in your trifecta: max player, attachment rate, a little bit of enforceable, and then I'll give you an extra one, Storm the Court. I just think it's going to be a big price and probably doesn't deserve to be so high. But I think there's a pretty good chance we see something special today. Tisdala looks to be that good, but Honor AP is coming into the race the right way, and I think he's his main challenger.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And a reminder that NBC coverage starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and post time this year for the Derby is 7 p.m. Thanks, Travis, for
Anytime.
allowing us in here.
Anytime.